This program is rated PG. It contains themes and scenes which may not be suitable for very young audiences. Parental guidance is advised.
Be advised that the views and opinions of the hosts and guests do not reflect those of the station.
Today, Politics Today will not just discuss Philippine politics today, but global politics. Because what we are seeing, ang nakikita po natin sa mga nangyayari tulad ng insidente na yan sa Marawi or yung debate tungkol sa martial law para dyan sa crisis na yan doon sa Mindanao and maybe in the rest of the country, this does not only involve the Philippines but the global powers. And itong unang segment po natin today will be discussing Terror Incorporated. Ito po ay organisadong sistema sa buong mundo. This is a global network, this terror network. And as you can see, they are now declaring themselves to be part of the IS, Islamic State network all over the world. It doesn't mean that they're that integrally and organically active or dynamically connected, because much of this, I think, is just a propaganda connection. But you cannot look at the incident in Marawi as a Marawi or a Philippine incident only. It is connected to the global network. And that is what we say is the Terror International or Terror Incorporated. And hence, can you deal with such things without the strong arm of the law and the strong state? Or in this particular case, martial law. Ramos has come out again pontificating about this and that, but he actually is very irrelevant in all these. During his time, the insurgents and the rebels, he bribed into some kind of accommodation with him, but he just postponed the problem. We have with us Professor Celso Cainglet, who has been an instructor in the Philippine Military Academy. Aside from having taught ethics of international relations, having also obtained a degree in that subject from University of Lorraine in Belgium, among other things. So what are your impressions of what is going on in Marawi and all this controversy about martial law and so on?
Well, the timing is very suspicious because it happened when Duterte visited Russia, and also there was a suicide bomber attack in Indonesia recently. The way I read the situation, I've been saying so many times that the West is dying. There's a shift of prosperity to the East. And we know very well that ISIS was created by the Central Intelligence Agency. And with this shift of prosperity to the East, I compare America to a dying man who will scratch and bite just to hold on to dear life. And what's happening right now are clear sabotage. You know, if you take advanced studies in intelligence courses, there's such a thing as sabotage and assassination course. You know, in Turkey, for example, there's that school for social destabilization, run by the CIA. And all sorts of assassination and sabotage. You take all of them. These people are trained for that.
And we've seen a history of these occurrences, starting with the 9/11 attack on the World Trade Center in New York. More and more people are beginning to realize that this was not just an attack. This was an inside job, as they call it, involving Saudi elements, involving some American elements, and some say Israeli elements. You have any reaction to that? Anyway, I have been studying that for a long time. I can
Yeah.
fill in whatever you may
Well,
want
the
to.
architect Association of Architects
Yeah,
in the
yeah.
United States already made a conclusion that
Yeah.
the collapse of the building was a controlled demolition.
Yeah, that's Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth. That is the formal organization. I think they have a few thousand, maybe by now 4,000 or 5,000 members calling for a reopening of the investigation of 9/11 because they do not believe the official results of the investigation done during the time of Bush. So,
And the United States government is really
yeah.
notorious for creating or supporting the terrorist groups all
That's
over
right,
the world.
all over the world. In fact, now we go to ISIS, and we can go back to 9/11 and the other issues. But Islamic State is traced by many analysts going back to the Afghan War and the support of the Americans to Osama bin Laden, the Mujahideen, which is the root of the global terror network now. Even in Mindanao, after Afghanistan, umuwi itong mga ito at naging core ng ating mga jihadists naman sa Mindanao.
I just want to make clear that ISIS is not a group. It is an ideology, like communism, that is adopted by many fundamentalist groups all over the world.
Yeah, and well, in ISIS, for example, in this case, in the past 5 years, where we have seen the war in Iraq and then in Syria, just last year, Russia exposed through their satellite photos the oil shipments of the ISIS in Iraq, from the areas where that they control, shipping by truck oil that they have extracted and selling it through Turkey. Turkey is a NATO member.
That's true.
Di ba? And that was finally shut down when Russia started bombing it, and then the Americans, to save face, also started bombing.
Yeah, and the interesting development is that this attack in Marawi happened when the president was in Russia. And of course, we know how President Putin had been very, very severe in dealing with the ISIS, and President Putin himself assured President Duterte that Russia will help the Philippines in battling ISIS. So I'm curious, excited at the same time, apprehensive of the unfolding of things to come with Russia aiding the Philippines in battling ISIS. You know.
Yeah. Well, I mentioned in our recent media forum in Kamuning Bakery Cafe that we can expect more of these incidents and events.
Even the president said that.
Yes, because the Philippines and Asia, particularly ASEAN, is breaking free of the American influence, if not control, in the past. And so they will try to disrupt this process of disengagement from the 20th century hegemony of the U.S.
Yeah. And ever since the America really wanted to maintain the Philippines as a banana republic, weak so that it can be manipulated, if I may share from my personal experience, I'm a social democrat. And you know very well the National Democrats and the Social Democrats do not see each other eye to eye. Way back then, of course, the National Democrats had their own armed group, the New People's Army. In our case then, we made a tactical alliance with the MNLF. That's why I know a lot of MNLF commanders. And no less than the MNLF commanders told me that they were getting their arms from a U.S. Navy ship.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So I remember also from some of my friends in the Magdalo who said that in the course of their discussions and training with the American advisors and trainers, one of the ideas they picked up is the easiest way to create chaos in a society is just drop arms in the middle of the town or city, and the criminal elements will be the ones to start picking it up and so on, and then the process will just run its own course and chaos happens.
I saw a post in Facebook recently that Japanese police literally have nothing to do because the rate of crime is very low. And you know that in Japan, the gun control is very strict.
That's right, yeah.
And studies have shown already that in a society where gun proliferates, criminality also proliferates. And Mindanao is a wild, wild west. I've been there so many times, and you can see guns there, high-powered guns that you cannot see in the armed forces.
Yeah, that's why this brings up this question about so many other voices yakking against the imposition of martial law by President Duterte. It's the same thing that you will hear in many parts of the world where various sectors oppose strong governments. But as I said in our recent media forum, the Philippines should have a period of strong and even authoritarian government, and I openly advocate this because our neighboring countries who are now very progressive, very stable, economies are very strong, almost all of them went through a period of strong government and authoritarian government. Singapore, Malaysia, of course Taiwan under Chiang Kai-shek and Chiang Ching-kuo, and then South Korea under Park Chung-hee. You need a period of reorganizing and stabilizing society. And we continue to be in chaos, especially after the 30 years of the American-sponsored Cory Aquino, Ramos, etc. governments.
But, it's interesting because I just found out that this is already the 6th time that martial law was declared on this country. The first time was in 1896 declared by then Governor General Jose Blanco to address the Katipuneros, the Katipunan Rebellion. The second time was in 1898, when Aguinaldo declared the revolutionary government and also declared martial law rules. And the third time was during the Second World War, Jose P. Laurel in 1944. And of course, the fourth time was Marcos, 1972. The fifth time was 2009, Gloria Macapagal Arroyo, when she declared martial law over the province of Maguindanao, but that lasted only for 9 days. And of course, this is the 6th time. I'm mentioning this because in reaction to all this yakking, because in every martial law that was declared, the context was entirely different. I was listening to General, the spokesperson of the armed forces this morning, and he said people who have this paranoia of a Marcos martial law are living in the past because times have changed. For example, during Marcos martial, of course there are excesses. There were excesses. The lead branch of service then was the Philippine Constabulary. Because when you say martial law, it's military control over the civilian. And there were excesses, but now, the Philippine Constabulary now is the Philippine National Police, which is a civilian agency already, and they are put under the military. Because when it comes to the military, I myself, the military has changed since martial law days of Marcos. I can personally vouch for their integrity, their sense of discipline. And I know what's going on in a soldier's mind as much as possible. No soldiers don't want to get involved in a human rights case. And nowadays, there are many, it's different. When Marcos declared martial law, the next day people were surprised. The radio were silent, television were silent, but now radio is going on. Constitution is not suspended. There are no military courts. It's the same. It's just that Mindanao was placed under control. Now, one of the yakkings I heard is that why the entire Mindanao? Why not just Marawi? Well, for those who are saying that, definitely they do not understand the dynamics of Mindanao. In Mindanao, there are always 3 flashpoints: Marawi, Cotabato, and Hulu. And historically, every time Marawi sneezes, the whole Mindanao catches cold. If thing erupts in Hulu, Sulu, more or less it's contained because they're a separate island. But every time things erupt in Marawi or in Cotabato, it spreads in the entire region. Besides, it's a land mass region, so movements by land can be is very easy. So it's very important to contain the movements of this terrorist group.
And we have to realize that even just a handful, a few dozens, can create chaos, and the chaos can be transported from one town, city to another very conveniently. And it stands to reason that President Duterte is concerned about all this. In fact, the same kind of trouble just happened in Bohol, crossing the waters, and Probably later on that this can happen to the Visayas and then here in Luzon.
And the president is the most informed person in this country. He might have intelligence information which we do not, which he is privy of, na hindi natin alam. That's why he declared martial law, and even exploring the possibility of extending
And
it.
why should we listen to the leftists who have always been against government? And in fact, Marcos's martial law was very successful in subduing
That's true.
an organized rebellion by the Communist Party
That's
and the
true.
NPA.
Yeah.
And that is why they will continue to oppose any
course.
imposition of strong governance and even martial law. Now, of course, martial law, technically the term is to put governance under military control.
Yeah.
Maybe that is something that has to be changed in the Constitution, because it is not necessarily completely run by the military, because the president is a elected civilian leader. But he is just using the instrument of the state, the military, to quell violence, and clearly this was a case of violence, and violence will continue so long as Terror International continues to exist.
And talking about military control, if you look at very progressive nations like Germany and Japan, they have a very martial culture. They run their society like a military.
That's why in Japan, guns are so strictly controlled.
And even corporation nowadays would prefer to hire former military men because they're very efficient. It's just that the image of our military here had been tarnished because of some excesses in the past.
Well,
during martial
those
law days.
excesses happen even without martial
That's
law.
true. That's true.
The reason why the military's image is tarnished here is because the real powers in media are controlled by the oligarchs who do not want a disciplined society so they can continue their abuses, their exploitation, their opportunism. And what are these? Inquirer is the owners are known tax evaders and exploiters, purveyors of disinformation.
Even during Marcos' time, I think Manila Times was owned by the Lopezes.
The Roses, di ba? Ang Manila Times. The Lopezes owned Chronicle.
Chronicle,
The
that's right.
Sorianos owned the Herald, if I recall those.
And they were the ones who were very anti-Marcos.
That's right. So, wag po tayong magpaloko dun sa mga nananakot tungkol sa martial law. At ang media po ay nasa unahan niyang pananakot because they do not want a disciplined society, so they can continue to abuse. ABS-CBN abuses its franchise. Channel 5, owned by Pangilinan, uses it for his big business, and so on. And then, of course, you have the other elements like the church. The church is always a rival of the state. That's why in China, for example, the church operates, but it is very clear that you are under the state. You do not spread messages or you do not preach anything that contradicts the goals of society and the republic.
You know what is funny is that netizens in Mindanao are posting all over social media saying we're more afraid of the terrorists than we are of martial law.
So let's be very clear there. And let us also put in perspective itong voices. For example, in social media, it's going around these pictures of the students of the University of the Philippines on the steps of Palmahol ata, protesting the martial law in Mindanao and supporting the victims of the terrorism daw. Those are contradictory positions.
That's right.
But as I said in my Facebook reaction, this is the legacy of the left, the muddled thinking, muddled-headed thinking. Now, Thailand now, after several years of chaos, political chaos between the forces of Thaksin and the establishment forces, the military had to step in, and for 2 years they've stabilized the situation. No more chaos in the streets. Yes, we need a strong hand in our society, at least for 5 years, to stabilize and prime our society for economic growth and stability.
Even Lee Kuan Yew said the problem with the Philippines is that you have too much democracy there. Because this democracy was imposed on us. This is a Western model of democracy, or live and let live, be what you can be, which may not suit our culture, especially our rebellious culture.
It certainly doesn't suit our culture. I will not even put maybe. We have such a fractious, divided power structure. you have powers of the church, powers of other sects,
Oligarchs.
and then oligarchs all have interests of their own, and they have the interest to keep the nation divided.
And I believe it's about time that the state puts its foot down, and we're lucky to have it in the being headed by President Duterte.
Yes, and so far the public polls supports President Duterte.
Yes.
And I think even in this issue of martial law, although I see the surveys again on the TV shows of the other major channels, and they will try to present this overwhelming reaction against martial law. Because, of course, they present it also
Of course.
the way they want to present it, which is negative.
Yes.
Anyway, in your experience teaching the Philippine Military Academy cadets, if you were there, what do you think would be transpiring in the discussions there about what's happening?
Well, they don't discuss so much. They just follow orders. And what is important is that in fact, the joke there is that before they study philosophy, because in philosophy we are taught to think critically, if you ask them to jump outside of the window, they will jump immediately. But after studying philosophy, if you ask them to jump out of the window, they will ask first, which floor, sir?
Okay.
But I'm telling you, the armed forces of the Philippines have changed a lot. We have a more professional armed forces.
Yeah. Now, you've been a consultant to some ASEAN governments, particularly Cambodia. Is it fair for me to say that essentially the majority of ASEAN countries, if not maybe just half, are still essentially authoritarian?
Majority.
Yes. So Cambodia is, Thailand today is under
Laos, Burma.
okay, and
Myanmar.
Malaysia is also
Malaysia is
very authoritarian. Singapore is still authoritarian.
Much more authoritarian. Yeah.
So what's this, what's this worry about authoritarian governments?
Maybe it's the American dream of be what you can be, free for all.
But let's look at what is
Yes,
happening to
that's
the
right.
United
It's
States.
collapsing.
Yeah.
There's a moral
And
decay.
the reason why the United States is collapsing is because they actually have a weak government controlled by factions of the oligarchy
Yes.
who are now against, major factions are against President Trump. And so we will see the collapse probably of the United States in the second half of this year or sometime next year.
Interesting because there's even a discussion among historians. Had the Japanese won during the Second World War, maybe we would have been a more progressive nation and more disciplined people. Because the Japanese are very disciplined, but we resented discipline.
Yeah, but now we see Japan recovered. I would expect that would be reflected in the colonies that they would have. No?
Yeah.
Although, of course, at that time they were very exploitative and there were lessons that they haven't learned.
Yes.
Well, that is Terror International. We cannot isolate what is happening in Marawi from the reality that these little pipsqueak would be nothing if they had no support from the outside.
Of course.
Di ba?
Of course.
What is Hapilon? Hapilon is just a little tyke.
Criminal.
So let us learn the lesson, particularly of the past 2 decades. Iraq War, World Trade Center.
Nicaragua, the Zapatista?
Yeah, no, the Iran-Contra.
Contratista.
Contras, the
Contras,
Contras versus the Sandinistas.
Yeah.
So,
And the Contras were supported and funded by the CIA.
that's right.
Oliver North.
That's right. Oliver North, the drug for arms deals,
Yes.
and so on. So, let us not fall into the trap of all this yakking against Duterte's martial law. This is the right move. In our second half, we'll talk about Marawi in particular, and we will have Princess Jaisal Kiram by phone patch from Zamboanga to discuss her views of what's happening there. Okay, let's take this break.